Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special Newsdesk edition of the World of Concacaf podcast. I'm Eric Schmitz.
I'm Jonathan Sleep.
And I'm Donald Wine.
And this special episode is just Postcards to the Pod. We asked you to send us questions, and we're going to answer them and or talk about them, discuss them. Got some great feedback on this. But yeah, we just love talking CONCACAF, so that's what we're going to do. Jonathan, is there anything you like more in life than just talking about CONCACAF?
Being in Caribbean islands talking about CONCACAF.
Okay, fair point.
I like that answer. That's my answer.
Yes. Okay. So there are things we like better, but we do like this. So
we should note that we are not on a Caribbean island answering these questions. We are in our homes, but maybe next time.
Yes.
Who's thinking?
Yes, but with Pilsner in hand, at least for me, we're here to talk about, CONCACAF nonsense, because that's what we do. All right. So thanks again to all of our fans, followers who sent us questions. Especially thank you to our patrons. You can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/podcacaf, POD. Really appreciate everybody's support there and for everyone that participates when we ask them to send us questions. So you guys are the best. And let's get started. First off, let's go to esteemed MLS writer, friend of the podcast, Ben Wright. Also, a member of Slape's Intrepid Tuesday night soccer squad. Ben asks us, what are your underdog picks for Concacaf Champions Cup? Can any non-Liga MX or MLS clubs make a deep run? Who wants to answer first? Donald, let's go to you.
So I have a couple of underdog picks and I have a Cinderella pick. I'm going to start with the underdog picks. The underdog picks, the first one I have is Cavalry FC. And the reason why I say that is because they play Orlando City, and the winner of that winner of that matchup plays Tigres and the Whitecaps. They kind of have like a fairly easy road if they can get past. I mean, all these teams are strong, but they don't have to run into a lot of Liga MX teams on their way to a final. So they have the opportunity to do something if they're going to do it. There's also Alajuelense. The reason why I say Alajuelense is I've been there. Their home field advantage when that barn is full is one of the best, if not the best, in the entire CONCACAF region. And they will only have to face one of America or Guadalajara. If they advance. And again, they have to come to that tin box. They may have to go to Chivas or to Azteca, but they're used to that sort of environment, and I think they could do well in it.
Yeah, and the thing about Alajuelense is like they were the Central American Cup winners, so they got the bye. So if they're going to go on, like, they have less steps to take to go on that run. So I think they're in a good spot there. Did you have anyone else?
Yeah. So here is my Cinderella pick.
Okay.
Ready for this?
Uh-huh.
Robin Hood.
Oh, okay.
So Robin Hood, they're, of course, they won the Caribbean Champions Cup thing or whatever, the CONCACAF League. And as a result, they got a bye into the round of 16. Now, that means that they await the winner of Toluca and Herediano. If they win that, whoever wins there, they then would play the winner of Philadelphia and Saprissa. All of these are winnable games.
No, they wouldn't play the winner.
Matchups.
They wouldn't play the winner of Philadelphia and Saprissa because Pachuca plays the winner of Philly and Saprissa.
Yeah. Yes, I was going to say Pachuca's there, and Pachuca's really the only Liga MX team that they could see before the semifinal. Mm-hmm. And they could beat them. Pachuca's not that good. They qualify. Yeah, sure, they qualify, but they're not that good. They're not world beaters. So I'm looking at Robin Hood. If there's going to be a Cinderella story, it's going to be Robin Hood.
Yeah. If I can make a quick sidebar before I give my one team, because I only have one team. I had a youth soccer coach. This is travel, maybe like when I was 16 or 17 years old. We weren't necessarily good, but you said these guys aren't that good. Every halftime speech, one of the first or second things he said is like, these guys aren't that fucking good. That's every halftime speech. And every time I hear someone say these guys aren't that good, that's all I can think about.
It sounds like the pep talk I give to the 14 beers at Chili's.
Yes.
Oh, actually, the pep talk I
halftime.
gave last night.
Every halftime.
Coach Slate, I need to see it.
But you did you talk about Robin Hood. See, on the opposite side of that, I think Robin Hood provides an opportunity for another team to make a Cinderella run. And I was looking at Herediano because they've got Toluca in round 1. Toluca's okay, but it's not like, I don't think they're like Tigres level good,
I mean, I got to see Toluca in person this summer when you and I both did in Leagues Cup. They're not, I wasn't that impressed. They're a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
Their goalkeeper takes the penlies.
Yes.
Like, so
their defense is, what's the word? Porous.
Yes.
Porous,
not
yes.
great.
No, I was going to echo the Alajuelense, and I do think Saprissa could make a run because Saprissa is going to play Philadelphia. That we know that it's not the old Saprissa, but that stadium is still rocking every time they play there. But like you said, Pachuca's not that great. Philadelphia is in a bit of a flux right now. I just don't think they're going to be as ready. I mean, we always see this with a lot of the MLS clubs. It's gotten better that where they're a little bit closer to the start of the season, but the League MX teams are going to, and even some of the Central American teams will have been playing a little bit longer and going to be in a bit more form heading into this. I think Saprissa is another one. I reject your idea that Calvary could do well because Canada.
I mean, like the Canadian Premier League isn't necessarily elite leveled,
It's not even the league. It's the Canada aspect.
Yeah,
but
it also bothers me that Cavalry is the name and they play in Calgary. Like, just call them Calgary FC.
I like that they have a name that's not City FC or City SC. No offense to you two down in Nashville, but it's cool they have a little flair every now and then. Even though when you
Music
think
City
Calgary,
Athletic was going to be
don't
way
think
better
of Calgary. Yes. But I will say on the CPL's behalf, right? Like, they have been clamoring for this for years since they started the league. They were like, we want a chance to go into the Champions Cup. We could beat these teams. We could do this. We can do this.
Yeah, prove it.
Now's the time. Yeah, now's the time.
Yeah.
Step up to the plate.
Yeah, but so thanks, Ben, for the question. I think we did talk about a bunch of teams that have a chance to like win a couple games, go on a little bit of a run. But as far as deep run, I think that at his question, can any non-Liga MX or MLS club make a deep run? I think the answer is no. If you think deep run is like semifinal or final, I think the way it's set up is for Liga MX and MLS to be like set up for success, which sucks, but I don't know. It is what it is. It's Concacaf. We will change this format 4 years from now. So
4? We can change it next year.
Next year.
Yeah. I was being, hopeful. But anyways, thank you, Ben, for the question. We appreciate your work. Make sure you follow Ben at Ben Wright. He's awesome. Next up, we've got our friends at the 94th Minute, at the 94th Minute on Twitter. And they ask, should they bring back the Caribbean Cup? Considering the current vibes about AFCON and the Asian Cup going on, would a Caribbean Cup, maybe held in the U.S., also attract great attention, especially on the sides that are sometimes overlooked in CONCACAF? Just before we kick it to Slate for his response there, just some background on the Caribbean Cup. The Caribbean Cup existed for almost, 30 years. The last edition was in 2017 when it was discontinued. They held it 19 times, and it was 7 different names in those 19 times they held the tournament, between sponsorships and just changing it up, and Jack Warner. Various
Jack
reasons.
Warner sucks.
Yes. There were also various formats. There were times when they would have it within one FIFA international window, playing games every other day. There were times they would do it over multiple windows. There were times they would do it in the summer. They really just made it up as they went along, as is CONCACAF. But, Slate, should they bring back the Caribbean Cup?
Yes, but I'm going to push back on one aspect of that question.
Uh-huh.
In no way should the Caribbean Cup ever take place in the United States of America.
Uh-huh.
Concacaf needs to quit scheduling tournaments in the United States of America. The Caribbean Cup should always be in the Caribbean.
What key question? If they held it in the U.S. Virgin Islands, does that count?
It's not the continental United States. It is not a state. It
Puerto
is an
Rico would count too.
overseas territory.
Okay.
And they are their own
Clarification. We're detail oriented here.
They're their own federation.
Okay. I think that's fair. Donald, what do you think about Caribbean Cup?
It absolutely should happen. Besides the vibes part, besides the fact that the Caribbean Football Union is the best sub confederation in the world.
Yes.
Those are facts. They don't need to be disputed or debated. I think the one thing is that we've always talked about all of these countries needing games, or most of these countries, right? Save for the, Jamaica, maybe Trinidad and Tobago. Most of these countries need these games to help improve their federation, to help improve their national team, to help get people matches, get them reps, so to speak. This is important to them to have this, because not only would it provide the vibes, it'll give them something to continually be pushing for. When you think about it, World Cup qualifying is starting in March with the bottom 4 teams in FIFA. And then those teams probably won't play again until Nations League. The only reason that they're playing is we have Nations League every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of been CONCACAF's way of keeping these teams involved. Another way to do that is to make CONCACAF Nations League maybe every 2 years, give it a little bit more, give it the flair that it deserves by, let us hold the trophy for more than 6 months before we have to play for it again.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I love that thing to death, but the Caribbean Cup would be amazing to help uplift those teams and also, again, give them the spotlight, because the vibes would be like stupid. It'd be stupid awesome.
Well, for me, part of in looking back at some of the things about why they discontinued it, Nations League is why they stopped doing it, is because they were like, we need to give them competition that's consistent. This tournament isn't quite it. We want to open it up so they're playing other competition, where it's just not islands playing islands, it's islands playing Central America and North America, and North American teams getting to go to said islands, and us drinking rum drinks on the beach. Like, there were positive things that came from the end of the Caribbean Cup. But I do think there's probably room in the calendar. And I think as we go, like, this World Cup qualifying cycle is different than it's going to be for every other one, because there's hosts involved. Like, we're hosting the damn thing. So once we get into the next cycle with, a new qualifying format and maybe some windows where you can fit in a Caribbean only tournament to get them even more games outside of qualifying in Nations League, I think there's some potential there. But as with everything in global soccer, it's pretty fluid.
So just a couple for those that fun facts about the Caribbean Cup. In 1990, on the day of the final, they had to abandon the tournament because of an insurrection in Trinidad. And the tournament was actually started by Shell, like Shell Oil.
Shell Oil, yeah.
Were the ones that started it for the first time.
So just to push back on the calendar portion of things, we're sitting here in January and 2 confederations are having their confederational tournaments right now, right? Africa Cup of Nations and Asian Cup. Asia has like the Asian Games like every couple of years in like November and December. Yeah, it's going to pull players away from their clubs, but especially here in this side of the world, a lot of the teams play, spring summer schedules. They spring, February, March to November or so. So you can have something in maybe December or January where, one, it'll keep those guys fresh who are in those leagues. Also, you're going to be able to capitalize on there being a lack of soccer in that time of year, right? Like a lot of European leagues are on their winter breaks. MLS is on their winter break. Liga MX has a winter break between the Aperture and Clausura. So you have a portion of the window where it would be good to have like a 2-3 week tournament to have these teams, kind of go at it. And again, be one where they can have kind of their own run of the litter when it comes to TV scheduling and things like that. CONCACAF is opening. They just broke ground on a center into the Dominican Republic. Like, there's no reason why they couldn't use that to their advantage.
Those are good points. I think they're, if you force your way into the calendar, you can do that. But I think, I don't know. You wonder where CONCACAF's head's at if they feel, or I mean, the Caribbean.
If it's important to them, they'll do it.
Yeah,
it's like everything else
important to them,
life, right?
They'll do that. But I understand them wanting to clear space for Nations League to be the preeminent competition in, the region, because it is. All right. So thank you to our friends in the 94th minute across the pond. Next up, we've got a U.S. focused question from our friend Andres. The question is about the U.S. men's national team. Is Camp Cupcake worth it? What is the best player to have their first cap from a Cupcake invite? The question obviously referring to January camp, which is, known as Camp Cupcake, as the U.S. would typically bring in a lesser opponent to play against their lesser squad. But Donald is like pointing at me like, wait a minute, I have something to say about this. Donald.
No, so first of all, I think that's where the Camp Cupcake became January camp, is because of that description, which is not accurate. The reason why it is called Camp Cupcake is because when it first began back in the early 2000s, when Bob Bradley,
they had cupcakes.
Bob Bradley's wife would bake cupcakes and send them to the players, and that was their way of knowing that they were called into this camp. Later on, Bruce Arena reflected that the cupcake was the opponent, but never has it been used to describe the players on our team. And I think the reason why this question exists is because in the players, they really want this because they see it as an opportunity for them to break onto the team. There's been 30 guys whose first or second cap was a January camp game. 30 of those guys have gone on to make World Cup rosters, and that's just not counting the numerous others that played regularly in a national team that didn't make a World Cup roster. So to answer Andres' question, here are some of the guys that have made a World Cup roster that also their first or second cap.
Just to clarify, so we're talking people who've made their first cap in January camp, in a January friendly, or is this just recent history, the actual Cupcake era?
No, since 1999, 30 players whose first or second cap came at a January camp match went on to get on a World Cup roster. Here are some of those guys. And these guys that I list right here, these guys, I believe all of them, their very first game was a January camp game. Clint Dempsey, Landon Donovan, Josie Altidore, DeMarcus Beasley, Carlos Bocanegra, Jimmy Conrad. I just listed, 6 of the greatest players that ever play in the United States men's national team program. Also, you have guys, there was 9 guys on the most recent World Cup roster who also debuted in the January camp, including Tyler Adams, including Matt Turner. So this is very important to the guys. And some of those players have come out and said how important it was for them to be a part of this because they gave them a chance to show what they could do and not have to worry about breaking through into the national team via, luck or injury or something like that. They got a chance to be right in front of the coaches. Jimmy Conrad has, we all know him personally. He's spoken to us personally about how much he valued that time and how important it was for him to break into the program. So here's the final thing. I think about this game. So go back more recently, 2021, there was like 2 or 3 guys, including Daryl DK, who got work visas in Europe to go play in Europe based on their appearance in the January camp game, which was the day before the January transfer window closed. So I'm sticking with that. This is important for these guys. It's a great chance to do that. But I think for the fans, I think U.S. Soccer needs to market it correctly. They need to go, hey, this is what we're trying to do with this camp. Here's the purpose. Here are the goals. And I know they can't break through to all of anonymous Twitter who thinks, they see this roster, they go, why isn't Christian Pulisic not in this roster? This is stupid. This roster is dumb. Tell them why Christian Pulisic's not in this roster. Tell them why you're including Esmir, Bajkarevic, right? Like, include that reason so that people understand what the purpose of this camp is.
Yeah, I had totally forgotten about all of because when this came up and I just was like back of the napkin, like looking at stuff, I'd completely forgotten about like Dempsey, Donovan, recently.
I want to push back here because Donovan's first cap was in October, a friendly against Mexico.
I said first or second cap. That's the list.
First cap. So that's yeah. So
second cap. The question was first cap. So like, I have a hard time considering just all guys who have come in through the camp. I think it's guys who never got a look until these games. Like they weren't even in the conversation until they got the chance to play and put a jersey on. So I think DeMarcus Beasley is probably the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're talking more about, the depth guys.
Or your Walker Zimmermans. Like Zimmerman
was one.
Look, Matt Turner's first game was a January camp. It was that I believe it was that 2021 camp. On my list. He literally used that game to jump into the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Like straight up, I think just on that.
That is the value of the camp. It's guys like Matt Turner who force their way into the conversation. I think just giving it as an experience early on in your career, I don't know if that's as much as actually getting on the field, getting your name up there. Your Matt Turner, your Walker Zimmerman, some of the other recent World Cup guys like Ali Bedoya had his first cap in January camp. Matt Beasler had his in 2013. Kellen Acosta in 2016. And also shout out Freddie Adu. He had his first in January camp. So, legends of the game finally getting their first cap. I think, you almost need to differentiate that it's got to be your first cap. Your first one has to be some friendly in, Chattanooga.
Yeah, point taken,
but that was Walker Zimmerman.
Exactly.
Yeah, all of a sudden, but point taken. But the fact remains is that there are still so many of those, legends that we just mentioned, where that's true. I think the one thing that U.S. Soccer does wrong is they consistently hold this thing in the United States. I think they should. There was one point, and I don't know.
Windward Islands. I don't know
if this was public knowledge, but I do remember back in 2017. So it would be January 2017. They had been talking about going abroad for both games. Jurgen Klinsmann was going to take the team, I think, to one was going to be in like Hawaii and the other was going to be like Asia.
There was a talk about Thailand at some point?
Yes,
I don't know if that's the same window. Okay,
it was the same window, and he was going to do that. He got fired in November after that Costa Rica game. Bruce Arena took over. Bruce Arena said, "I'm bringing this thing to LA." I do remember they had that one match where they went to Chile and then came back and played in the United States. But they need to do that. Test the guys and take these guys on a trip. You don't have to go to, Asia would be cool. Like, of course, for the fans, it'd be cool. But it also increases the importance of that moment for them. Instead of saying, hey, we're just going to play in LA again because that's where it's, it's warm, or we're going to play, these places that get all the games, they're just going to play there again. Take them to somewhere, challenge them, and tell them, hey, this is a business trip. We're going in here. We want you to be ready. This is an opportunity for you, and let them zero in on that moment.
Yeah. You want to know why I remember that Chile away game? It's because they wore red socks.
Mm-hmm.
It was like white, red, and it looked cool. Never did that before. Breck Shea played in that game too. I also remember Breck streaking down the wing in red socks. So I think in the end, the answer to this question is DeMarcus Beasley.
That's fair.
First cap.
He's one of the greatest players that ever lived. He's one of my favorite players that ever lived.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Yes. Legend of the game. All right. So thank you, Andres, for the question. We love you. All right. And our last question we've got is from Antonio at UC_Raider on Twitter. His question is, when is Concacaf going to create the most chaotic soccer tournament ever and invite CAF teams to the Gold Cup? Or would it be more chaotic from CAF to invite CONCACAF teams to AFCON?
This is something near and dear to Donald and I's heart.
Yes.
Eric hates this.
Well, yes and
Eric,
no. The thing I want to clarify is that before you guys answer and talk about how much you would love this and that the chaos would be off the charts, is that rumors are that this might actually happen. There were reports that spread early in 2023. I was able to find an article from Marca saying that the 2025 Gold Cup would feature invited teams from UEFA, CONMEBOL, CAF, and AFC as a part of a 2014 tournament to help prepare for the 2026 World Cup. So theoretically, the conversations are out there, but I'm deferring to you two. To what extent do we need to get the African nations involved in our nonsense?
So the thing with the rumored one, because that was actually expanding to 32, they were going to expand to 32 teams for that.
The report I've got is 24 countries.
I heard 24.
Yeah. So the other thing too is like two teams from Africa isn't really going to really ramp up isn't going to really give us the full nonsense of both a Gold Cup and an African Cup of Nations. What is the great things is the nations that maybe don't make a tournament all the time, because like they do have to qualify for African Cup of Nations. It's actually a pretty long, arduous process, and so you get some of these teams that had first opportunity to play in a tournament like this, and then we get some wildness, and even from the referees. I think it was a Concacaf referee the last iteration. He got the he ended the game. He ended the half early on
ended the game twice. 5 minutes. 8 minutes early, and then 3 minutes early.
And then 3 minutes early. So I'm all in support of this. I think from a timing perspective, because I would really want to make sure that like all of the teams had all of their people, is if they did it in the summer, bring it over here. I mean, I would love to see the U.S. go over and play in Africa, play in Dakar, play all over. Like that would be incredible. But I think the only realistic way we see this happen is if we get this happening in the U.S.
Yeah, I think the Gold Cup could be that potential. But
yeah. So there's two answers to this question. The first one, the very simple answer is I think more CONCACAF teams should be playing against Africa teams in Africa. And not just like the South Africas and the Egypts and the Moroccos. Go to, again, like you said, go to Senegal, go in deep, go to Kenya, go to Mozambique, go to Zambia, those type of places, right?
Go to Nigeria,
Ivory Coast, Togo, Liberia. Yeah, do those. I mean, secondly, look, Africa has island qualifiers too. We should be kindred spirits with this group. We got qualifiers, island qualifiers. They do too. This should be a no-brainer. But
listen, we put it on Madagascar.
Mm-hmm. Mauritius, we can do that too.
Yeah, we put it on Madagascar. The lemur is
Seashells.
The mascot for the tournament. We could make this happen.
Sao Tome, Principe, we could do that. But here's the deal. I would say it's not I think it's a great idea to have African teams in the Gold Cup if we're going to be inviting teams. But again, I think not every team has to be from Europe and South America. I think the current version of the Gold Cup, as has been rumored, is going to be a FIFA-ized version of it, right? So we're going to see maybe Morocco and maybe Nigeria, like teams that we have seen before, teams that we have played recently. Again, if they're going to do this, I want them to, maybe have a little mini tournament for those teams that Jonathan was just talking about, those teams that just miss out on Africa Cup of Nations, which I think is 24 teams, miss out on that. And then, they go, hey, you can still come to the Gold Cup, and you pick from that group of teams, and not necessarily bring in Egypt all the time because they have Salah, bring in Morocco because they just made the World Cup semifinals, bring in Nigeria and South Africa because those are the only ones that people can find on a map. Like, we need to be learning about these teams. And I think, honestly, the style of play, the chaos, the vibes are all very similar. And I think that would make for some entertaining games.
Give me Equatorial Guinea, where they fire their coach in the middle of the tournament.
No, Ivory Coast.
Ivory Coast.
They're hosting. Yeah, they're hosting. And they also might make the knockout stage anyway. So I don't know if they're going to bring the coach back, but Reminds me, was that Guatemala in the Gold Cup in 2021 that
Yeah, they
fired their
lost.
coach?
They fired their coach, but then they got put back in because
Was
Curacao
it
got COVID.
Curacao? Yeah, got COVID,
Yeah,
and they had to withdraw, and Guatemala was in. So their interim coach, first of all, had to be declared the interim, and then the very next day had to recall all the players that had scattered all over the world because they were out of the tournament. Yeah, those are the vibes that need to be brought to the United States.
yeah. It is the greatest game in the world. All right. Thank you to all of our fans who, sent in questions. We really enjoyed all this chatter. We're actually going to continue the chatter. We're going to do a one more round bonus episode as well, kind of talk about all of this stuff some more. You can find that on our Patreon, patreon.com/podcacaf. Exclusive subscribers, just extra content. Listen to us talk about Concacaf and these fun topics of, tournaments and nonsense and quitting coaches and, islands. It's wonderful. Thank you to all for listening. Donald, Jonathan, do you want to pump your other projects?
Yeah, you can find me at JSlapeSSP on Twitter, and then at BroadwaySportsMedia.com for written work.
Find me at BlazeDW on Twitter and also at StarsandStripesFC.com.
Yeah. And USA Soccercast, right?
And USA Soccercast, that's right. Yes. We do have a couple of things coming up, so check out the feed.
Yes. Gotta listen to that. You listen to this, you listen to that, and then, you tell us how much you love it. Make sure you're following us on socials at Podcacaf, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, MySpace,
Friendster, Zanga, LiveJournal.
Yeah, Moblog,
LimeWire. Napster.
I think actually LimeWire did have a social feature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with, every song that was named wrong. All right, anyways, we're cutting it. See y'all.